I'm currently recording the session, so you may proceed now.
Okay. Start na kami, ma'am.
Yes po. Yes.
Sige, sige. So, hello everyone. This afternoon, my group and I will be reporting two topics: the psychology of dreams and the psychology of imagination. So, Lizelle and I will be the first to report, and we will discuss the psychology of dreams. So, dreams are one of the most fascinating and mystifying aspects of sleep. Since Sigmund Freud helped draw attention to the potential importance of dreams in the late 19th century, considerable research has worked to unravel both the neuroscience and psychology of dreams. So, what is dreaming? Dreaming is a physiologically and psychologically conscious state that occurs during sleep and is often characterized by a rich array of endogenous sensory, motor, emotional, and other experiences. So, what are dreams? Dreams are images, thoughts, or feelings that occur during sleep. Visual imagery is the most common, but dreams can involve all of the senses. According to the research, 65% of the elements of the dreams are associated with your experiences while awake. And according to the National Sleep Foundation, we typically dream about 4 to 6 times per night, and we forget more than 95% of all dreams. On average, most people dream for around 2 hours per night. So, when do dreams occur? Dreaming can happen during any stage of sleep, but dreams are more prolific and intense during the rapid eye movement stage. So, on the screen is the sleep cycle. And as you can see, before reaching the REM sleep, an individual will need to experience the three phases of non REM sleep. So, the first phase may last for 5 to 10 minutes, and in this stage, your eyes are closed, but it's easy to wake you up. In the second phase of NREM stage, this can last for 10 to 25 minutes, and in this stage, you are in light sleep. Your heart rate slows and your body temperature drops. Your body is getting ready for deep sleep. For the last phase of NREM sleep, this is the deep sleep stage, and in this stage, it's harder to rouse you. And if someone wakes you up, you will feel disoriented for a few minutes. And for the last stage of the sleep cycle, the REM or the rapid eye movement, REM sleep happens 90 minutes after you fall asleep. The first period of REM typically lasts for 10 minutes. So the sleep cycle repeats throughout the night, and REM sleep is distributed evenly through the night. The majority of REM sleep happens during the second half of a normal sleep period, which means that dreaming tends to be concentrated in the hours before waking up. During non REM sleep, dreams tend to involve thoughts or memories grounded to a specific time and place. In contrast, during REM sleep, dreams are typically more vivid, fantastical, or bizarre, even though they may involve elements of waking life. So let's proceed to the types of dreams. So there are 6 types of dreams. First, the normal dreams, common dreams about people and experiences that we can sometimes forget. Second, daydreams. Daydreams occur consciously, but you may still feel like you're not fully awake or aware of your surroundings. You may look zoned out or lost in thoughts. Some research has shown that daydreaming about people you know predicts positive well being, while daydreaming about people you aren't close to can predict more loneliness or worse well being. So, third is false awakening dreams, a vivid type of dream that feels like you have woken up but you're actually still asleep. Fourth type of dreams is a prophetic dreams, dreams that have foretold a future event. In some cultures today, dreams are still considered to be a way of receiving messages from the spirit world. However, there is no real way to tell if a dream is prophetic or not. It comes down to what you believe. Some believe that a prophetic dream is just your subconscious anticipating a particular outcome and having you dream it to prepare. So next is nightmares, disturbing and scary dreams that can feel realistic. Some potential causes of nightmares include watching or reading something scary, sleep deprivation, eating right before bed, medication side effects, having a fever or being ill, and sleep disorders. So people experiencing a lot of stress or who have mental health conditions like anxiety disorders may experience dreams that are more frightening. Up to 71% of people with post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD may experience nightmares which may be recurring if not treated. So, remember that nightmares are different from night terrors because night terror is a type of sleep disorder that is most common in children than adults. It is not a type of dream but rather a sleep disorder. One study found that the three most common nightmare themes are death or dying, physical violence, and being chased or haunted. Nightmares typically happen during REM sleep and are vividly recalled dreams. So the last type of dream is lucid dreams or being completely aware and in control of the dreams you're having. So basically, you are aware that you are dreaming while you're in a dream. It happens usually during REM sleep. Some research reports that 55% of people experience lucid dreams at least once in their lives. In the last 20 years, psychophysiologist Dr. Stephen LeBurge has become the pioneer of lucid dreaming research. Not only did he invent one of the most popular lucid dreaming techniques, but he has led many scientific studies on the subject. So let's proceed to how to lucid dream. First is reality checking or reality testing. Reality testing or reality checking is a form of mental training. It increases metacognition by training your mind to notice your own awareness. So, metacognition refers to the processes used to plan, monitor, and assess one's understanding and performance. According to cognitive neuropsychiatry, your level of metacognition is similar in your waking and dreaming states. So, higher metacognition when you're awake could lead to higher metacognition when you're dreaming. This may be related to the brain's prefrontal cortex, which plays a role in both reality testing and lucid dreaming. So to enhance your metacognition, you can do reality test while you're awake. So here are the common reality checks that people use to lucid dream. First is mirror. Check your reflection if it's normal. If it's normal, you're not dreaming. And kung hindi siya normal, meaning you're dreaming. If it's normal, wala ang sa reality ka. Next is solid objects. Push your hands against the wall if it goes through. If it goes through, meaning ga-dream ka, ga-dreaming ka. Hands. Check your hands if it's normal. If it's not normal, meaning ga-dreaming ka. Time. If the time in the clock constantly changes, that means you're dreaming. Breathing. Pinch your nose. If you're still breathing, then you're dreaming. Next is wake back wake back to bed or WBTB technique. This technique involves entering REM sleep while you're still conscious. So there are three wake back to bed technique. First is retire to bed. Set an alarm to wake you after 4 to 5 hours sleep, then retire to bed. The aim is to interrupt your sleep cycle just prior to entering the stage in which REM sleep is most prevalent. Second, wake at the present time and remain awake for a short period. Upon waking from your alarm, get out of bed and occupy yourself for 15 to 90 minutes. Do whatever is required to make your mind alert and active, but without going as far as to make returning to sleep impossible. Third is return to bed. Return to bed with a firm intention to recognize that you are dreaming what once it occurs. So when you go back to sleep, you'll be more likely to lucid dream. While you're awake, choose any activity that requires full alertness. Because according to the study in PLOS 1, the chances of lucid dreaming depends on the level of alertness and not the specific activity. Next technique is mnemonic induction of lucid dreams or mild. This technique is one of the first methods to use scientific research to induce lucid dreams. So this technique is based on a behavior called prospective memory. In, that involves setting an intention to do something later. In mild, you make the intention to remember that you're dreaming. Next is keeping a dream journal. So when you write a dream journal, you are forced to remember what happened in the dream, which will help you recognize dream signs and enhance awareness of your dreams. So last technique is the wild or wake initiated lucid dreaming. This technique involves directly entering dream from waking life. Lie down and relax until you experience hypnagogic hallucination or the hallucination that occurs when you're just about to fall asleep. So there are four techniques in the wake initiated lucid dreaming. First is wake yourself up after 4 to 6.
Hello? Na nadula si ano, Angelo?
Wait lang gid, ma'am.
Oh,
Ako na lang mapadayon, ma'am.
okay, sure.
So ang next technique is to go back to bed and lie absolutely still. And then,
Hello?
wait lang gid, ma'am. May
Everything okay?
napatay ka na iya phone, ma'am.
Uh-huh.
Din ako nag-ano, ma'am, napatay akong cellphone.
Ah,
Sorry.
sa those steps na
Are you sa techniques, ma'am?
oo, pero tapos ka na sa I think sa wake back to bed, kaya ka na nga sa demon, oo.
Mnemonic. Wait lang.
Sa last na siya, ma'am, sa may wake initiated.
Wait.
Yan.
Sige. So, so last technique on how to lucid dream is the wake initiated lucid dream technique. A description of the technique close to method originally described by Stephen LaBerge. So first, there are four technique in the wake initiated lucid dreaming. So first, wake yourself up after 4 to 6 hours of sleep. So get out of bed and stay up for anywhere between a few minutes to an hour before going back to bed. In here, you wake up naturally, in contrast to WBTB, wherein you set an alarm. Second, go back to bed and lie absolutely still. Third, Once in the half dream state, you will experience hypnagogia as a mixture of patterns and colors that take over your vision in the darkness. Fourth, and last, since your consciousness is still linked to your physical body, which is now asleep, you may feel the effects of sleep paralysis. So, sleep paralysis is defined as a natural protection mechanism which stops you from acting out your dreams. So, if you feel like your limbs are going numb, don't fight it. So, remember, that these induction techniques do not have enough empirical evidence yet. So some researchers say that these techniques are effective but wala pa, hindi pa not sure. So if this technique, just be careful because you might not wake up. So for the next reporter is Lizelle Panogodia, and she will discuss about the theories and the use of dream analysis interact.
So good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, classmates. So here are some of the theories explaining why people dream. Okay, so the first theory is the psychoanalytic theory by German psychiatrist Sigmund Freud in the year 1900s. So according to Freud, dreams are gateway into a person's unconscious mind and repressed wishes. And he also made a distinction between the manifest content and the latent content of the dream. So manifest content is the actual dream or the storyline of the dream. The latent content, on the other hand, is the hidden meaning of the dream. This theory posits that dreams serve two purposes. First, it keeps a person asleep by blocking out external stimuli, just like what we do before we go to sleep, like turning off the lights or minimizing the noise in order for us to sleep peacefully at night. Second, Freud said that dreams are released repressed wishes. So Freud viewed humans as having grotesque sexual desires lingering in our unconscious. And these desires are suppressed even before they are perceived. So since we are not able to manifest or to act out these desires to protect us and allow us to get along with the society, dreaming serves the purpose of releasing these repressed wishes. So, in other words, dreams give us a way to act out our unconscious desires in the safety of an unreal setting, because acting them out in reality would be unacceptable and immoral. The next theory is the threat simulation theory by Antti Revonso of 2000. So, according to this theory, dream consciousness is essentially an ancient biological defense mechanism evolutionarily selected for its capacity to repeatedly simulate threatening events. So, in other words, there are threatening events that we encounter in the waking life or when we are awake, and these threatening events are repeatedly simulated during our sleep. This is the purpose of this is to enhance our defense mechanism required for threat avoidance. Because, di ba, when we are repeatedly exposed to a particular situation, or we will be more knowledgeable on how to handle it. Next, the next theory is, next slide, please. Okay, the next theory is Jung's theory of dreams. It is proposed by the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung in the 20th century. So, despite a lot of agreements between Freud and Jung's theory on dreams, one fundamental difference is that Freud's approach is backwards, because he focused on the casual sources of dreams in early life experiences. Whereas Jung's approach is forward driven because he tried to understand where the dreams might be leading and what they might reveal about the individual's future development. Also, according to Jung, dreams have multiple meanings. Next, our psyche is a self regulating system that uses dreams to help maintain a healthy dynamic balance between the consciousness and the unconsciousness. So when a person, if when we become egoistic it is a sign that our consciousness is superior than our unconsciousness. This is evidently an imbalance between the both of them. Now, our psyche will try to resolve this imbalance by bringing forth dreams that will bring us back down into our depths. So, these dreams are supposed to make us humble. That's why dreams, according to Jung, are psychological compensation, specifically um, reductive compensation. Next, Ange, please. Okay. So, dreams serve as reductive compensation because they will counterbalance or compensate our feelings of superiority towards others by making us prone to dreams more about our sins, our failures, our evil impulses, and the like. So, dreams give us honest portrayals of who we really are as people. And that's why, although we think too highly of ourselves, we will never be perfect because of our shortcomings. And according to Jung, dreams will always remind us that. The next theory is, next slide, please. The next theory is the expectation fulfillment theory, proposed by Joe Griffin in 1993. According to this theory, dreaming serves to discharge emotional arousals that haven't been expressed during the day to deal with the emotional arousals for the next day. Next, please. Okay, so on the right side of the screen is the expectation fulfillment process. So first, you will set up an expectation. For example, it is a real life example. In your workplace, you have a very strict boss, tapos very, ano siya, nagger siya bala. So one time, kayo nasobrahan na gid siya, you felt this urge to talk back to him. So, based on this situation, the expectation you set up is to talk back to your boss. Now, in this example, after you set up an expectation, your autonomic arousal system will raise an emotion based on the expectation you set up. So in your case, it is anger. Kay gusto mo sabtonin mo boss, kay naugot-ugot ka na. Now, if you are able to talk back to your boss, then the expectation is fulfilled. Your autonomic nervous system will then be aroused because your anger vanished. Kaya napagwa mo ng kagat mo ka na because you talk back to him. However, if you are not able to talk back to your boss, then the expectation is unfulfilled. So obviously, your autonomic nervous system will not be aroused because you suppressed your anger. And this emotion that you were not able to discharge while you are awake will be deactivated metaphorically in a dream. So you may dream that you are screaming at your boss or you're fighting with him because dreaming serves to discharge your emotions that were suppressed when you are still awake in order to prepare you for the next day para pagka-boss wala na ikaw galgat sa imo boss. So dreaming is an avenue for for the deactivation of arousals where they could do no harm. Next slide, please. So the fifth theory is the activation synthesis theory by Harvard University psychiatrists John Allen Hobson and Robert McCarthy in 1977. Okay, so here's the process. According to Hobson and other researchers, circuits in the brainstem rather, are activated during REM sleep. And then once these circuits are activated, area of the limbic system involved in emotions, sensations, and memories, including the amygdala and the hippocampus, are all activated. Now the brain will synthesize and interpret this internal activity and attempt to create meaning from these signals, which results in dreaming. The next and last theory is the continual activation theory proposed by Ji Sang in 2004. So this theory posits that even during sleep, our brain continuously store memories from short-term memory to long-term memory, and dreams are the product of this data transfer process. Now, this theory distinguishes Next, please. Okay, so this theory distinguishes between declarative and procedural memory. So declarative memory is the memory of facts. These are memories of anything we learned or anything we heard. Basta all the information that we can discuss or declare. These are all declarative memories. Procedural memory, on the other hand, is the memory of procedures. These are the memories of how to do things. Now, Zhang created a model on how we process memories. So there are four memory stores for the declarative memory, and there are also four memory stores for procedural memory. And these stores are the sensory, the working, the temporary, and the long-term memory store. The sensory memory store is the buffer zone. The data is held in this store for only milliseconds up to a few seconds. It will then be transferred to the working memory through attention. In working memory, this is where we manipulate information. Like, for example, if we are trying to solve a problem or if we are trying to recognize a vase, the working memory is responsible for that. And then the temporary memory is a limited capacity storage for memories. Memory stays there for a while, pero dasig lang because it will either be deleted or moved to the long-term memory. Lastly, the long-term memory store is the storage of information over an extended period. Next slide, please. So during non-rapid eye movement or during non-REM sleep, our brain processes declarative memory. So amo dyan process, the declarative working memory will retrieve data from the declarative temporary memory and compare it to the data in the declarative long-term memory. Anything unnecessary or duplicated are deleted. And during this time, a person is more prone to night terrors because the, because during non-REM sleep, the brain is processing declarative memory, di ba? So for example, you watched a scary movie before going to sleep. The brain may process that memory during NREM sleep, hence making you prone to night terrors. So you might wake up kicking or screaming without recollection of what you dreamt. You may remember dreaming, but not the contents of your dream. So this kind of dream is referred to as the type 1 dream or a thought-like dream. Next, please. So during REM sleep, our brain processes um, procedural memory. So the same process lang ang naubra kang brain, similar to how the brain processes declarative memory. But in this stage, you are almost paralyzed because it is making you physically unresponsive to um, the, to what your brain is processing during REM sleep. Kaya di ba, procedural memory, it is a memory of procedures. So base bala nga kung ano ginadamgo mo iobrahon mo sa sleep. So that's why you're almost paralyzed during REM sleep. Now, your associate systems located in your frontal lobe will add additional memories to the random memories retrieved during the continual activation of the declarative memory stores. And together with your emotion systems, they will use these memories to create images and events which will eventually become the manifest content of the dream referred to as the type 2 dream. Now, the type 2 dream are more vivid. They are dream-like dreams. And they typically happen during REM sleep, but they can also happen during non-REM sleep and when we are awake. So that's all for the theories about dreams. Let's proceed to the use of dream analysis in therapy. So the first is psychoanalysis. During dream analysis, the person in therapy shares the manifest content of the dream to the therapist. So for example, the client is Lisa and she's a student. Then she shares her dream to the therapist. Tapos ang nadam gonna be is she was in the backseat of a moving car that has no driver. And then the stoplight ahead turns red and she is unable to stop the car. So after sharing the manifest content of the dream or the storyline of the dream, specific symbols will be pulled. So the therapist may help Lisa break down her dream or manifest content into the following symbols. There's a moving car, tapos may backseat, neon red lights, and then the loss of brakes. So after specific symbols are pulled from the manifest content, the therapist utilizes free association to facilitate the exploration of repressed material. So in free association, psychoanalytic patients are invited to relate whatever comes into their minds during the analytic session. So, ipamangkoton ng therapist si Lisa nga, when you think about the moving car, what comes into your mind? And so on. Tapos, through these associations, the therapist will give potential meanings in order to arrive to a fitting interpretation sa situation ni Lisa. Next, please. Okay. Next is the Jungian analysis. This analysis is more focused in unlocking the dream's message. So in this analysis also uses pre-association, but it is more, but they also use amplification. Sorry, mo tututulan. So amplification is based on the assumption that humanity shares a collective unconscious or a set of universal inherited experiences. So in this technique, collectively agreed upon associations are explored. For example, the person in therapy dreams about dogs. Sa free association, it's more subjective. So, kung pumangkoton kang therapist ang client about kung sa DNA associate ang dog, it is more personal. Okay, it is more personal. And it is only understanding your dreams based on your experiences or life situation. Whereas in amplification, it goes beyond using just the individual's association. It explores the collective understanding of the symbol found in the dream to help the individual find its meaning. So, for example, para like for most people, ano sa din nila gina-associate ang dog. Like for everyone, dogs are man's best friend. Dogs are affectionate. So this is um, to understand the meaning of the dream based on what's collectively identified and what's collectively agreed upon associations. Next slide, please. Okay, the next is the Gestalt therapy. In here, Gestalt therapists believe that dreams are existential messages we send to ourselves. And these messages are actively explored to bring dream content into a person's actual life. So the major technique that Gestalt therapists use in Gestalt therapy is the take the part technique, wherein a person is asked to write down everything remembered about the dream. And then he or she is asked to act out each part of the dream, creating a dialogue between parts. So for example, the client is, Kayla, and she is a family of the deceased. Now she dreamt about a hooded figure in her garden. The take the part technique will start when the therapist encourage Kayla to ask the hooded figure a question like, "What are you doing in my garden?" And then the therapist will play the part of the hooded figure. The therapist will reply to Kayla's question. The therapist may answer that, "I am here to protect your loved one." So this back and forth playing of parts helps people in therapy clarify their feelings from all angles. The next is existential art therapy. The therapist acts as a witness as the person in therapy attempts a journey of self-discovery. So dreams here are explored, interacted with, and analyzed through art. So the existential art therapist encourages those in therapy through their attempts to find meaning from the imagery, providing support, but they are avoiding making interpretations for the individual. So that's all for the use of dream analysis in therapy. Our next reporter is Angelo.
So let's proceed on the debunking of myths about dreams. So first myth is dreams have a mind of their own. In fact, you can write your own dream sequence. Dream experts say there are things you can do during your waking hours and right before bedtime that can influence what you dream about. So there are 9 ways to hack your dreams. First is change your sleep position, get cheesy, don't scare yourself, watch black and white TV, deal with daytime stress, take dream enhancing supplements, sleep with soothing smells and sounds, eat caffeine and spicy foods, and don't go to bed hungry. So experts say sleeping on the right induces peaceful sleep. You can also eat Stilton or blue cheese if you want to have dreams with odd and vivid contents. Also, do not watch scary movies before going to sleep because doing so may cause nightmares. Next, if you want your dreams to be in the shades of gray, watch watch black and white TV. Also, do not go to bed hungry because it decreases sleep quality due to drops in blood sugar. In addition, drink dream enhancing supplements like vitamin B6, vinpocetine, galantamine, and choline, and herbs like calea, zacatechichi for more vivid dreams and to increase chances of lucid dreams. Also, before going to sleep, surround yourself with pleasant aromas like rose smell to induce good sleep. You can also drink caffeinated drinks and spicy food for a greater chance of remembering your dream. Lastly, deal with daytime stress because emotions not discharged during wakefulness can lead to dreams that focus on your problems. So let's proceed to the myth number 2. Dreams don't mean much. That's why they often don't make sense. In fact, in an ancient civilization, dreams were messages from the dead or predictors of future. Freud also contended that dreams are expressions of our repressed wishes. Dreams can also warn us about danger. Hence, dreams are not nonsense. Third myth is people who sleep better are more likely to remember their dreams. In fact, it is only when you wake up during or after REM sleep that you are able to recall your dream. This is because during REM sleep, melanin concentrating hormone or MCH is activated, which regulates sleep and inhibit hippocampus responsible for memory storage. Fourth myth is people who stay up late are less likely to dream. In fact, people who stay up late are more prone to nightmares, which is linked to the stress hormone called cortisol. This hormone peaks in the morning right before we wake up, the time wherein people are more likely to be in REM. If you're still sleeping at the time, cortisol could trigger vivid dreams or nightmares. For the last myth, only children have night terrors. In fact, night terror occur in about 3% of adults. It occurs during deep non-REM sleeper and the sleeper abruptly aroused from sleep, feeling terrified and often crying. So that's all for the psychology of dreams. Let's proceed to the psychology of imagination.
Okay, so once again, good afternoon, everyone. For the second part of our report, me, Donna, and Kayla, we're going to discuss about the psychology of imagination. So, what is imagination? The term imagination in its ordinary use is up to suggest the fanciful and the unreal, the poetic and the purely aesthetic. Imagination, in the psychologist's meaning, might be called the consciousness of objects not present to sense. So, according to the American Psychological Association, imagination is the faculty that produces ideas and images in the absence of direct sensory data, often by combining fragments of previous sensory experiences into new synthesis. So next slide, please. Okay, so next we have the nature of imagination. So first, nature is that imagination is constructive or productive. It is the rearrangement of the past experiences into a new pattern. It does not create the elements or materials of an image. It reproduces the elements of past experiences and forms them into new combinations. Imagination is not exact reproduction of a past experiences, but rather the contents of past experiences are reproduced and combined in a new order. So let's say nga may ara ka na mental picture or memory sang roses kag color blue sa imo nga past, but you've never actually seen blue roses because in the first place wala sila ga-exist sa aton surroundings. But with imagination, pwede ka naka-reproduce ang image sang blue roses sa imo nga mind by constructing or reproducing the image of a rose and the image of color blue together, which you have perceived or remembered in the past. So that's why imagination is constructive or productive in nature. Okay. Okay, second nature is that imagination is mental manipulation. So according to Woodworth, he calls imagination mental manipulation because an individual rearranges facts previously observed and recalled at present into a new pattern in imagination. So just like sa mention ko bago lang, imagination is also called a mental manipulation because kita nga mga tao, we have the ability to manipulate, construct, and reproduce our past memories and experiences into mental images that we want, that we wanted to depict or picture in our minds. And lastly, imagination is motivated. It is influenced by our wishes. Imagination is a process of trial and error activity in order to satisfy a want. It is a mode of adaptation to an ideal situation. And it is a device for achieving unattainable goals. So like for example, let's say you're into fictional books or stories. Tapos gusto-gusto mo man ma-experience ang mga life sang mga characters sang ginabasa mo nga mga stories naman na. So ang amuni nga mga wishes or ang imong mga goals are very unattainable because in the first place ang mga characters or ang mga scenarios nga mga nagakalatabok libro is hindi siya real or wala siya ga-exist sa aton nga reality. So in order to satisfy your wants or wishes, you will motivate or manipulate your imagination to let you experience those kinds of things even though sa mind mo lang tanan gina-picture up. So amo na siya ang nature of imagination. Next slide please. Okay, so now we have the types of imagination. So according to Dr. Murray Hunter, he has identified 8 types of imagination, which he says we use on a regular basis. So first we have the effectuative imagination. So it involves the synthesis of existing ideas and information to form a new thought or idea. This type of imagination is often triggered or guided by your own random thoughts or memories, especially of your past experiences. So like for example, reading is one activity that will offer you more information and ideas to synthesize, and therefore, it will fuel your effectuative imagination. So that's why sa aton mga famous nga mga writers or novelists, di ba may mga foundation kina sila when it comes to the character, storyline, or plot, kag even sa ilang theme mga gina-include when they're writing their novels and books. So by reading diverse genres ang libro or even inspired by their own past experiences, diri sila gakuha ideas and other elements nga gina-incorporate nila sa ilang own works. So sa amo man nga types ng imagination, it's necessary to study existing ideas to be more creative. Next, we have the intellectual or constructive imagination. So it involves a very deliberate process that starts with a definite idea and is used when considering or developing different hypotheses and possibilities based on available information. So this type of imagination is commonly exercised in philosophy, politics, and government because needed ang extensive research, which is guided by one's imagination to make sure all your ideas or creation is complete as it can be. Also, this type of imagination can be exercised or seen sa areas of mathematics or science, like for example in physics. When Newton hit upon the hypothesis of gravitation to explain the fall of bodies to the earth by a stroke of imagination, so he had intellectual imagination. Next, we have the imaginative fantasy. So this type of fantasy can be guided or unguided and involves generating new ideas from scratch. So it's the type that comes to most of our minds when we think of the word imagination. So this type of imagination, although still triggered by some source of imagination, ang aton di mga minds will likely wander off or dinhi na siya makadto. Like for example, we may explore ideas or mga thoughts that may or may not rooted sa aton nga reality. And these thoughts or ideas can often lead to us to create new stories, pictures, poems, songs, or even generate new and other ideas. Okay, so next we have empathy or empathetic imagination. It is our ability to understand and share the feelings of others or to put yourself in their shoes. In many ways, empathy both requires imagination, which to understand and feel something that you haven't actually experienced personally, and contributes to it to the feeling of empathetic towards someone's situation might inspire you with new ideas. So the idea of this imagination is that an observer projects himself into the object or the person being observed and gets some satisfaction from watching an object that he would get from being that object or person. Like for example, ibutang ko na siya biyahe sa object. Like for example, seeing a flying kite. Diba, sa bata pa kita, gawander gid kita na kung what if be maging isa man ko bikaburador or ano yan ang feeling nga ara ka to sa ibabaw langit gilupad-lupad ng upod sa mga pispis or mga something small wanderings like that. So with that, just by watching a flying kite, it gives us by empathy some sense of freedom that appropriate to the behavior of a kite. So that's empathetic imagination. Next, we have the strategic imagination. It involves the ability to envision multiple possibilities of what could be and to weigh the possible risks, benefits, and outcomes. So, like for example, someone who is an avid planner and seems to be prepared for everything or anything is likely someone who has a strong strategic imagination. So, ang sa mga organizer, sa mga planner, sa mga ano dyan, mahilig bala magplano, bala sa mga palaabuto nila, ang mga ulobraw, sila na ang may more may strategic imagination. Next, we have the emotional imagination. So it refers to our ability to extend emotional dispositions into emotional scenarios. If you want to elicit certain emotions from others, you'll need to use your emotional imagination and draw your awareness of human emotions, which is why this site is in many ways related to empathy. So, for example, we know that three-headed monsters aren't real, but yet many of us still experience feelings of fear when we see them in movies. So, we can imagine that the monster is real and we feel the very real emotions of fear as a result. So, amo na kisa abala maglantaw kita mga horror movies, di ba bisan ara lang kita sa tubang sa aton nga phone, laptop or TV man sa screen lang, di ba mabatsyagan naton nga kung may mapakibot or mga tsura nga mga kalain, dapla sa mga tsura na amo na nagakabatsyag kita dayon sa mga fear or nakakulbaan, tapos nakibot, something like that. So that is emotional imagination. And next, we have dreams. Dreams are unconscious type of imagination. They consist of images, ideas, emotions, and sensations that occur while we sleep. So again, discussed na siya earlier. And lastly, memory reconstruction. Our memory is selective and being reconstructed to fit your view of the world. So therefore, memories are also influenced by emotion. In order to receive your memories of people, things, or events, you must use imagination, which often fills in the gap. So, muna siya. Next slide, please. Okay, so next slide, we have the additional types of imagination. So first, we have the passive imagination. In passive imagination, the mind is comparatively passive and does not make any effort of the will to picture the images. So the images come from of themselves to the mind and are combined automatically by the suggestive forces. So in this imagination, this is the easy play of imagination. So like for example, when we are in a listless mood and fall into a daydream and build castles in the air, so positively may ara kita sang passive imagination. So next we have the active imagination. So in active imagination, the mind exerts itself to picture an image. It makes an effort to receive the contents of past experiences and combine them into new patterns. The images are not automatically combined by suggestive forces. So like for example, sa diring imagination, when we write an essay, we put forth effort to the mind to remember the relevant elements of our past knowledge and arrange them in a fresh manner. So, diri gina-exercise naton ang active imagination. Next, we have the receptive imagination. In receptive imagination, the mind makes an effort to picture a scene described. The materials of imagination and the order of their combination are suggested to the mind from without. So that, for example, whenever we read stories, novels, or watch dramas, poems, history, even geography travels, we exercise or we have receptive imagination in which we receive the images from without. So, next, we have the creative imagination. In creative imagination, the mind constructs an imaginary situation. It creates a new image out of the materials which it receives from within itself and arranges them in a fresh order. So, example, when an engineer constructs the plan of a building, or when a novelist arranges the incidents of his or her story into a plot, he or she exercises creative imagination. Next, we have the practical imagination. So, in practical imagination, it serves some practical purpose. It is also called pragmatic imagination. It is involved in a practical construction. So, it is controlled by objective conditions. In order to realize a particular end, it must satisfy the real conditions of the external world. So, for example, when devising a plan or of a building or machine, we people practice practical imagination. So it fulfills the practical needs of our life. Also, pragmatic imagination must conform to the objective conditions, and it must satisfy or must be subject to object control. And next, we have the aesthetic imagination. So in aesthetic imagination, it satisfies our aesthetic impulse. It is directed towards the gratification of sentiments. It does not satisfy any practical need, nor does it add to our knowledge. It is neither practical construction nor intellective imagination. It satisfies our craving for beauty, and aesthetic imagination is the imagination which is involved in the creation and appreciation of beauty. Here, the constructive activity is essentially free, and it has not to satisfy external conditions. So under sa aesthetic imagination, we have the fantastic imagination. It is a mere play of imagination, as in daydreaming. So the imagination which forms ideals of truth, beauty, and the like is artistic. So makita ni naton ang aesthetic imagination like sa mga musician, poets, sa mga artists, they all exercise this type of imagination. So both aesthetic and fantastic imagination are all about ideals and beauty, because mainly focus sila sa artistic endeavors of a person. And lastly, we have the image imagination. So memory is reproduction imagination. It is exact reproduction of past experiences, and imagination is productive imagination. It consists in reproducing the elements of past experiences and rearranging them into a new pattern. So like for example, when you remember a woman and a fish and you will conjoin them in imagination or in your mind, and you now, as a result, you have the image of a mermaid. So you have an image of imagination. So next slide, please. Okay, so next we have the imagery. So imagery, ang ano naman sa aton, familiar naman. So just a little bit of a review na lang. When it comes to imagery, different individuals imagine in terms of different images. There are different types of images of imagination, as there are different types of memory images. So the imagery of sight is most predominant with most persons. Others can easily picture auditory images. Visual, auditory, and tactual images are vivid. Olfactory and gustatory images are less common and vivid. So persons are classified into audile, tactile, motile, and the like according as the largely imagined in terms of visual, auditory, tactual, and motor imagery. So next. So next we have the imagination in a child. So the imagination is mental manipulation of the objects of past experiences. The child gradually develops the power of imagination. So it is manifested in four developments, namely manual skill, constructiveness, make-believe, and storytelling. So first we have the manual skill. Okay, so manual skill. The development of manual skill in the child shows that he has developed a power of imagination. He grasps and manipulates objects and gradually acquires manual skill. Manual skill depends upon mental manipulation or imagination of objects. So manual skill begins with child's manipulation, where it develops into several directions. Like for example, grasping, turning, pushing, pulling, shaking, and dropping of objects. So in this stage, gina-learn or gina-familiarize sa kabata on how he or she would manage his toys or her toys better. Next, we have constructiveness. So constructiveness, the child's constructiveness also is an expression of its power of imagination. In this act of construction, the child sees the ways in which objects can be arranged or mentally manipulates certain objects. So, for example, the child may take things and put them together, building blocks, assembling dolls and toy animals into groups of families or parties, setting a table, or arranging toy chairs in a room. So in this stage, ina-categorize or ina-arrange ang mga kabataan ng ilang objects or toys nila. And next, third, we have the make-believe. So make believe, the child's imagination expressed in make believe, which is an important element in play. Thus, make believe is an expression of imagination. Play with imaginary companions also is an expression of imagination. So examples of make believe is that, for example, when the little boy puts together a row of blocks and pushes it along the floor, asserting that, or yun imagine niya nga mga train of cars na kuno. Or when the little girl lays her doll carefully in its bed, saying, may bibisik kay ano kano nang nagpalamig kuno sila sa guwam na kuno nagkasakit iya nga baby doll. So in these cases, this might be spoken as manipulating things according to the meanings attached to them. And lastly, the fourth development of imagination in a child is storytelling. So the child later develops the power of storytelling. He invents a story out of the elements of past experience. Thus, he or she shows the power of constructive imagination. In storytelling, the child thinks of certain objects and combines them together in his own way. Some children are capable of making verses, which is also a manifestation of imagination. So kung sa make-believe stage siya, the child is an actual object to manipulate according to the meaning that they attach to it, while on the other hand, sa storytelling naman niya nga development, the child simply talks about the persons and things and makes them performing his or her story. Like for example, nag-ano na sila go-obras sa mga story or either mga na verses na coincide mabala sa ilang ang mga toys kung paano na nila ihatagan meaning. So that's storytelling. So that's it for the nature, different types of imagination, imagery, and development of imagination in the child. Thank you. Next reporter, Donna.
Okay, so let's go now to the development of imagination. First, imagination depends upon memory, which depends upon perception. So our perceptions can be influenced by many factors, even under normal circumstances. We know, for example, that how we feel affects what we see, and the music affects how we perceive facial expressions. When we imagine things, visual working memory can influence our perceptions. So that means that the mental images in the mind's eye can alter the way we see things. Next, children under 3 have only memory of reproductive imagination. They can only revive their past experiences. So imagination consists in reproducing the contents of past experiences and arranging them in new order different from that in which they were originally experienced. It is sometimes called productive or constructive imagination because in it the mind constructs a new image out of the contents for the past experiences. Next, during the 3rd and 4th years, children have abundance of creative imagination. Next, from 4 to 8, their creative imagination is of fantastic type and divorces from reality due to their lack of knowledge of the external world and its laws. So their unrealistic, weird, and sometimes strange imagination occur or happen. That's because of their or due to lack of their knowledge. Next, manual skill, constructiveness, make believe, and play and storytelling indicate the development of imagination in children. So just to add examples lang, kay gin-discuss naman siya ni Vivian, for the manual skill, the child gradually develops the power of imagination. So for example, when a child makes a house of a dump sand, he has an image of a house in his mind. So for constructiveness, the child's constructiveness is also an expression of its power of imagination. So for example, if a child or he or she builds a house with a dump sand or a mud and arranges dolls into parties, take things apart and puts them together. So in this acts of construction, the child sees the way in which objects can be arranged or mentally manipulates certain object. Next would be the make, believe, and play. So for make believe, the children's imagination is expressed in make believe, which is an important element in play. For example, if the little child or a little boy rides a stick and treats it like a horse, so he knows that it is a mere stick, but imagine it is to be horse for the same being. Lastly, for the storytelling, in storytelling, the child thinks of certain objects and combines them together in his own way. So some children also are capable of making verses, which also is which is also a manifestation of imagination. Next, as they grow older, they acquire knowledge of the external world and become more practical. Their creative imagination ceases to be fantastic and becomes more pragmatic. Pragmatic imagination satisfies the demands of the reality and it's more objective than subjective. So as we grow older or as the child grow older, our perception and different things, imagination, our thinking change, develop, and grow to become more pragmatic. So it simply means that we are concerned with more matters or with matters of fact than what we could or should be. Next, during adolescence, fantastic imagination again becomes predominant with a strong element of emotion. It takes the form of daydreaming. So, daydreaming is seen as a form of information processing, especially processing information relating to self and current concerns. And sometimes also, daydreaming can be used as a way to escape from stress and pressures that we are going in our reality. So, for example, trying to imagine all the things that would you make happy and putting them into a story in your mind. Next, the adolescence becomes the hero of their own daydreams. So why adolescence called daydreaming stage? Because in adolescence, daydreams are used to consolidate a sense of self and to prepare for future actions. Next, adolescence is eminently the age of daydreaming. Excessive daydreaming is harmful to the individual. With the passing away of adolescence, imagination again becomes pragmatic. And lastly, artistic imagination emerges. It creates ideals of truth, good, and beauty. It rises above the practical needs of life and satisfy the deeper cravings of the mind. This may also be called idealistic imagination. Next, please. So we have here the roles of imagination in mental life. First is enjoyment. Imagination affords pleasure to a person. He or she can remember the past scenes of great enjoyment and imagine himself or herself enjoying them over again. He or she can also anticipate future experiences full of joy and derive pleasure from them. So, vivid reminiscences and expectations are sources of great delight. Next, we have sympathy. It is the ability to share the feelings and emotions of others. This depends also upon the ability to put oneself in the place of others, and this involves imagination. Thus, sympathy depends upon our imagination also. We can enjoy a drama by identifying ourselves with the imaginary characters. And lastly, for the roles of imagination, which is the creative works. So this may include the weaving, beautiful plots, creating interesting scenes, making grand designs, investing machinery, and the like depend on creative imagination. And also to add, we have here engineering, architecture, sculpture, painting, music, poetry, drama, novels utilizes creative imagination. Next, we have the misuse of imagination. So first is telling lies. Young children have very vivid images. So they are apt to confound images with perception. This is the reason why sometimes they tell lies. Also, they cannot distinguish between things, perceived, and creatures of their imagination. Next, we have the night fears. Many night fears of young children are due to the confusions of images with or with our perception. So they vividly like imagine some ghosts, giants, demons, hobgoblins in the dark corners of a room when alone at night, and seem to perceive them actually. So we mostly experience this when we are alone at night, nga naga-imagine kita sa mga aswang-aswang pag due to our perception abi naton tuod or we perceive them actually or reality. Their vivid images are only hallucinations. So they are images projected to the external world and appear to be real objects out of our perceptions. Next, we have imaginary companions. Little children, 3 or 4 years old, often experience imaginary companions. That's why most of the time, or sometimes only, we can see children or a kid like 3 or 4 nga may daw na istorya siya nga kuno abi playmate niya. So they have very or they have vivid images of playmates and confuse them with percept. So they are also found to play with imaginary companions when they are all alone. And lastly, living in unreality. So our mind or the mind and introvert child flies away from the reality and lives in an imaginary world. Excessive daydreaming is harmful. It makes the child different and unable to cope with the world or the real world. In adolescence, also persons indulge in daydreams and substitute an imaginary world for a real world. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Now let's proceed to the importance of imagination for children, for adults, and in life. For children, the first importance of imagination is emotional development. During imaginative plays, children take different roles, and these roles can be from TV characters, cartoons, occupational, or social roles. Pretending to be someone else helps children understand different perspectives and induce empathy in them. Moreover, it gives them self confidence and hence develop self esteem. Next, importance of imagination for children is social development. Imaginative plays help children develop different social skills. One best example is pretend play, for it is a gateway to enhance the social interaction and communication of the children, and they learn to take responsibility for different social roles. Like for example, mag-play sila, they will pretend being a doctor or a patient, so it helps them understand the situation better. Next, it enhances their creativity. The importance of imagination in encouraging children's creativity is undeniable. Psychologists use the imaginative powers of children to test their imagination. This creativity leads the children to develop artistic tendencies like arts, writing books and novels, writing songs and poetry, and etc. That's why we have some very talented children kay bata pa lang na try na. Next is communication skills. Children during their pretend plays or imaginative plays talk with themselves. Kina istorya nila ila self kag mag-acting or drama-drama. So this is a great way to learn a language quickly and develop healthy communication skills. And the experimentation with language during the process helps them build their vocabulary and remove their hesitation of speaking with adults. And last importance of imagination for children is cognitive development. Children are highly curious because they have not fully developed and they do not understand things completely. So, this is why they use their imagination to satisfy their curiosity. For example, solving puzzles and using Legos to build something that requires thinking and imagination. So, these things help children develop their cognitive skills. And these are the few benefits that children get from imagination and imaginative plays. Every child indulges in imaginative plays and there is nothing to worry about. However, parent needs to look out for their children and any peculiar behavior. Next is important of imagination for adults. First is to kindle creativity. Imagination means to imagine something new or create something in your mind that does not exist in real life. So this is how people collect their ideas from their imaginations and create something new. As a result, it encourages people to innovate and in other words, imagination leads to innovations, which is the key to development in the world. Next is imagination is a sweet relief. In adults' lives, there are various stresses and problems, just like what we experience as students. And the world has evolved around materialistic growth that often causes exhaustion and stress in people. So, in these circumstances, imagination serves as a temporary relief. It acts as a safe house where adults can enter to relax their minds and come back refreshed. So, Consider, for example, the ongoing pandemic. It has caused mental and emotional problems for people. And uh, one great example is what I am experiencing right now. Kay naka-quarantine kami, kay may nag-positive sa among fam. So I just received a message na i-admit kid sa hospital. So sometimes we cannot do anything about the situation, and sometimes we feel helpless. So with this, imagination acts as a buffer. So dako gid nahap sa imagination for everyone to cope with this pandemic kay malimtan mo man imo problems maskin temporary lang. Next, imagination is good for business. Limiting imagination to just arts is not right. Imagination is the source of creativity and generating new ideas, which is why it is important for every profession, including business. So, businesses run on creating new products and gaining profit from them. Imagination helps businesses to get new ideas and create new products or plans. So, imagination enables businesses to grow and encourages entrepreneurs to achieve their goals. Next, importance of imagination for adults is reminiscing childhood. Imagination is a bridge between adults and their childhood experiences. Although childhood experiences cannot come back to one's life, imagination can. It is a reminiscence of childhood for many adults. Moreover, imagination is a healthy way of experiencing childhood experiences without getting stuck in them. Next is important of imagination in life. So first is temporary relief from stress. Imagination, makahelp yun sa aton kung sa manim time problems ta, maskin temporary lang kay gaka-divert ang aton yung attention. And it also enhances creativity and hence innovation. That's why we have gadgets now and anything that we enjoy that was result of imagination also. And it gives new ideas to people for problem solving or achieving some other goals. It gives hope to people for a brighter future. So when we imagine, it helps create scenarios that we might be able to do and achieve in the future. It also prepares people to face their future. And the innovation achieved by the power of imagination have brought modernization and development to the world. So just like what I've said, ang mga gina-enjoy to subong, like our gadgets and anything nga na naging successful kag na made possible nga sa una gina-imagine lang. It also makes people believe in the possibility of anything. Everything is possible in the world. So what may seem impossible sometimes could actually be made possible. And the power of imagination has given this world famous book, comics, and movies. Example, Harry Potter, Marvel Universe, DC movies, and are some biggest franchises that are based on the power of imagination. So just imagine, because of wide imagination, people are earning billions of money. And imagination is the reason for many political movements and trends. Democracy, now a famous political approach, was once an idea presented by Greek philosophers and has now revolutionized the world. So when you think about it, imagine lang siya before, long time ago, but now it is used worldwide. And last is life on Mars that is being talked about in the 21st century was once just an idea in someone's imagination, but who knows, someday it might actually be made true. So to summarize the importance of imagination, one can make fun of imaginations of other people, but one cannot deny the importance of imagination for adults, children, and everyone in this world. So as mentioned, with what we have discussed earlier, there are many benefits of imagination that both adults and children receive. Next slide, please. Next, autistic thinking. Autistic thinking is uncritical imagination. So, autistic thinking is thinking that is sufficient unto itself and does not submit to any standard. It does not agree with reality or the standard of the society. It is contracted with realistic thinking and socialized thinking. It does not submit to self criticism or the criticism of other people. It is self sufficient and it does not accord with reality. Next is daydreaming involves autistic thinking. Autistic thinking is found in normal persons who are immersed in their imaginary worlds impervious to realities. It is also found in persons. some of some of them are uncommunicative and unresponsive to the environment. They live in their own worlds of fancy and refuse to take note of the external world. And others transform the world into a make-believe world and read their own meanings into things and persons that surround them. Moderate daydreaming is a safety valve for our repressed desires, but excessive daydreaming leads to mental disorder. So, syempre, normal naman kasi mag-daydreaming ta, but if excessive daydreaming na, of course, something is wrong na. Next slide. Next is the use of active imagination in psychology. We have here psychoimagination therapy. It attempts to put the individual through his own imagery into a particular situation that would evoke a set of interactions that be useful not only in revealing major problems in the areas of significance in the patient's life, but that would also permit him to relieve experiences. In summary, psychoimagination therapy helps us to reach within ourselves and addresses our issues using active imagination rather than relying on reality alone. So, with this, imagination plays an important role on helping individuals through imagination therapy, which can be done through artistic activities such as dancing, painting, through music, and etc. We have also here active imagination acts as a dynamic connecting link between the conscious and the unconscious, thus providing channel through which greater ecological cohesion and wholeness can be achieved, and active imagination represents a method by which archetypal imagery arising from the unconscious can be applied in therapeutic contexts to bring clarity and meaning to one's life and inner process. Next slide, please. Studies and research about imagination. You have here imagination can influence perception. A novel study by Joel Pearson of the University of New South Wales and Rosanne Rademacher of Maastricht University and Frank Tong of Vanderbilt University wanted to find out if people have accurate knowledge about their own imagery performance. The results of the study confirmed the author's suspicions, suggesting that imagined experiences are not merely epiphenomenal. So when we say epiphenomenal, it means a secondary phenomenon that occurs alongside or in parallel to a primary phenomenon. So that is people's evaluations of mental imagery there a direct relationship to their performance on perceptual and cognitive tasks in the real world. According to Pearson, future research on their experiences of mental imagery will not only help to reveal the inner workings of this fundamental ability, but it may also help in research and treatment in cases of hallucination. So when mental imagery becomes disruptive. Next, is imagination good for the brain? A brain imaging study led by University of Colorado Boulder and Icahn School of Medicine suggests that imagination can be a powerful tool for helping people overcome phobias or post-traumatic stress. So, because imagining a threat lights up similar regions of the brain as actually experiencing the threat does. So, according to a neurological study, being imaginative creates more neurons in your brain, and if you continue to exercise your imagination later in life, you can be up to 73% less likely to develop memory problems that led to dementia. So if you are imaginative and your brain functions well, as long as hindi man siya excessive, kaya if mo na, you might be experiencing a mental health problem. Next slide. We have here Kant's theory of imagination. Immanuel Kant's theory of imagination is one of the most enduring aspects of his philosophy, inspiring philosophers ranging from Hegel to Sellars, Heidegger to Strawson. So the lasting legacy of Kant's account is due in part to his broad conception of the imagination, in contrast to philosophers who construe the imagination as something that operates in fairly narrow confines. Example, just in acts of make-believe or visualization, Kant conceived of the imagination as a more pervasive mental capacity that contributes to cognitive, aesthetic, and moral aspects of our lives. In the end, whether we consider aesthetic ideas or beauty as a symbol of morality or the sublime, we find Kant highlighting the significance of moral function of the imagination as it mediates between nature and freedom. So this, however, is but another way in which the imagination plays its fundamental role in Kant's theory, bridging the gaps in human life, enabling to see beyond what is here and now to reach layers of meaning that give our human world its texture. That's all. Thank you. So that's the end of our report.
Okay, can you hear me, class? Wait lang din, ha? Class? Hello po?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Yan,
okay,
ma'am.
so thank you very much, Group 7 for your presentation. So, just a few questions. So, what surprised you or what insights have you learned during the time you were researching for your topic? which is about psychology and of dreams and imagination.
I have one, ma'am.
Okay.
Um, I always find dreaming very magical, but before I didn't really made an effort to do research about it. But
Mm-mm.
now that we are asked to report about dreams, I realized that there are a lot of plausible theories about why we dream, but in the end, it's always about how we interpret them individually.
Mm-mm.
So, regardless of the actual reason why we dream, our dreams can really make us a better person, especially kung we use dream analysis in therapy. So soon, if we become mental health practitioners and we decide to employ dream analysis and therapy, it can really help the clients clarify their feelings, understand some aspects of themselves and experiences they have that they find difficult to understand, and also help them with the decision making process. And nami ano ko man kang theory ni Jung, because hambal na ang dreams ko no, it will remind us that we are not perfect. It makes us humble. And that made me believe that dreams are really helpful to to us people.
Oh,
Sa amal na na, ma'am.
okay. How about your other group mates? Do they have any?
Ako, ako siguro,
Sige,
ma'am.
sige.
Oo, ma'am, sa amon bala sa imagination, like na surprise gid ako ma'am kay pag-search ko bala ma'am damo galit types sang imagination kay wala yun ako ga wonder nga amo na bala ma'am nga may damo-damo gali siya mga features or types ng imagination kay abi ko lang daan na sa una ma'am kusan sang nag ano mo ko sang amo ni nga course ma'am like do isa lang bala ma'am kay imagine nata kay like do amo lang na
Imagination
so
lang
nga
in
bala mo do.
general. No, wala siya.
Oo, do general lang gid nakon bala mga concept ang paghangop ko sa amo na nga no. Pero gali diri ko nabalaan nga amo na may mga ano siya kini ma'am damo-damo siya nga ma-applyan bala ma'am nga hindi lang gali nga daw for easy play lang bala ma'am like daw wala lang nga daw nagamuni-muni ka nga daw ikaw lang isa amo na bala ma'am.
Mm-mm.
Oo.
Okay.
Yan tapos ma'am ang sa isa na ng ma'am ang sa research bala ma'am and studies about imagination ang sa one study to ma'am nga kung being imaginative creates more neurons in your brain bala ma'am nga may din nga 73% nga less likely ka maka-develop dementia like daw makuha ko nag-ano ko na tayo ma'am din ang una ma'am i-share ko din sa fam ko bala ma'am nga una dapat nag-imagine maka mo hindi ka mo ano sa ulihi mag-dementia bala exercise mo inyo nga creativity to imagination something ma'am na bala ma'am. So, nahalipay man sila sa amuni nga, ano ma'am nga, ano, wala
Studies.
findings.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sige. So, anyone else from your group who would like to answer my question?
Ako po, ma'am. Ang sa akon, ma'am, do mas, ano lang, mas na-appreciate ko pagid ang importance ng imagination because I have learned nga we should not limit imagination for just arts only,
Mm-mm.
that we must appreciate the importance of imagination. Kaya when you think about imaginations for others, di do ka pang bata lang or drawing, painting, but kung isipon mo gid siya ba life, kung imagine mo lang, other people are earning billions of money, millions, billions, because of their wide imagination. So, and also when we think about it, most of what we are enjoying right now is a product of someone's imagination that was made possible by them. Oo nga.
Okay. Sige. Any question from the class that they would like to ask to the presenters? Okay, wala man. Sige. So, I will just check your attendance before we go on our 15-minute break. We'll have a minute break. Mabalik lang kita din mga 2:45 for the next presenter, which is ang last na lang gid, which is the psychology of uh, religion and cults, which is also very interesting man. Kay very relevant man siya. Sige. So siya sa mga beliefs. So reminders also for the groups that have not passed their handouts. So please pass their handouts. Ang last deadline is today para makaubra na ako exam. Also, I think may group ko nga ginapa-correct kung ilang handouts. So also, please, I would also like to follow up on that. So, okay. Before I record this,